My name is Donna Namnoum. Over the years that I've been making wheel-thrown sculptural forms, my work has evolved, one series leading to the next. Never really interested in making functional pottery, from the beginning I used the potter's wheel to make sculptural forms. I have cycled back to forms inspired by plants more often than not, and over the past few years have been making covered jars whose lids are covered with succulent-like and various plant forms inspired by all sorts of vegetation. In the 1990s, I created a garden of oversized flowers made of ceramic, steel, and hardware parts that were painted with encaustic. An exhibit of these sci-fi-like sculptures at the Lyman Allen Museum in New London brought the viewer through a garden with signs as if in a botanical garden. Throwing on the potter's wheel is central to my forming process, offering the possibility of fresh and spontaneous creations. Each of the individual parts is formed on the potter's wheel and is altered and assembled. The forms that come off the wheel allow me to create works that look alive as if they're growing, twisting, and even wilting. Throwing these parts on the wheel and then building with them is my favorite part of the process. Being able to make changes as I go along is fun, allowing me to see the forms and then go with it, making aesthetic decisions as the forms change. In the current covered vessel series, the main vessel becomes the host, and the lids of these vessels grow sprouts from the surface, or are meant to appear as though they live inside them. And for the viewer, the pottery form is familiar and brings them into the sculpture. Meanwhile, they evolve from representational to varying degrees of abstraction. Whether partially abstract or representational, the final pieces represent my own vision of plants, bugs, and other natural forms. Surface and color is important to the finished forms. My experimentation in making glazes allows me to add texture, interesting layers, and colorful surfaces that can bring the forms to life. Recently, I began pushing my own limits of size and scale to see where that brings me. I'm not sure why I began using crackled, crawled, and textured glazes rather than classic glassy glazes, but having used them for a while now, they seem to add depth as well as an otherworldliness to the forms. I hope that it also looks as if the forms are aged and fossilized. I am always aware of the uncertainty of how a piece will turn out, making the whole process of creating, from throwing on the potter's wheel to finishing the surface, an exciting adventure. My goal is for that uncertainty and experimentation to be visible in the final work. My 35 years as a public educator, most of that as a high school art teacher teaching ceramics, has helped shape my habits as an artist. While teaching, I was able to make art and show, but as a retired art teacher, I am now able to work as a real artist, using the bulk of my time to make art. As a teacher, I always showed students the work of other artists when I gave an assignment, as inspiration for both the conceptual ideas and for ways to use a certain forming process. Now, to inform my own work, I constantly search the internet and social media for new concepts and ways of using the material. I tend to work in a series because I like to fully explore each idea. Making just one piece from an idea doesn't give me the best possible work. It takes several pieces to work out all the technical issues of the form and also to really figure out a way to express what I want to express. I start by researching my idea, perhaps plant forms, growth patterns, and even other related sculptural forms by other artists. Then I spend a lot of time sketching versions of the ideas, changing shapes as I draw. Once I decide on the basic form, I throw the vessels and the covers. Then, once I've made 5 to 10 of those forms, I begin to throw the parts from which I build the plant-like structure. These will all be kept wet and then assembled when they are in the leather hard stage. I'm always trying to figure out my next series. Usually, the process of making the form naturally leads me to the next idea, the next form, or the next structure. But sometimes I struggle, and if I do, I go back and begin something similar to another series I've done, and that usually leads me to the next piece. I'm always trying to figure out my next series. Usually, the process of making the form natural leads me to the next idea, the next form, or the next structure. But sometimes I struggle, and if I do, I go back and begin something similar to another series I've done, and that usually leads me to the next piece. Just showing up, going into the studio every day keeps the process going. I really don't understand what people who don't make art do with themselves all day. Currently, I'm playing around with wall pieces, bowls, and other new forms for expression. As much as I search, I keep going back to the covered vessels, but that's okay too. I enjoy the process and the quest for the perfect form, color, and texture combination.